Are you? Have we ever talked about? We've talked about communism, and the thing that always annoys me about people in our generation when they talk about communism, where they say that it's great in theory but doesn't work in practice. If you ask anybody, ask your sister right now. Go. Is your sister home?
Probably.
I want you to literally right now find your sister and ask her what she thinks of communism.
I think my roommate is here. I can ask him.
Sure. Wait, my prediction. I need to say a prediction before it works. The prediction is that he will say that it's great, but it doesn't work in practice, and he will list Russia and China as examples. And well, whatever.
I'm supposed to ask you. Wait, what is the question?
What do you think about communism?
Okay. What do you think about communism?
Okay.
He was trying to predict how you're going to answer.
Okay, is this for class or something?
No.
Oh,
I'm just Skyping a friend.
okay. Communism. Since I live in America, I have to say it's terrible and bad and horrible.
Can you hear him?
He said, "Because I live in America, I'm going to say it's terrible, bad, horrible."
Yeah.
Let's say, well, what do you think, not as an American, just as a person?
He wants to know what you think as a person, not an American.
Communism, I think, in theory, is like supposed to be, I don't want to say perfect, but kind of close to it's supposed to be, like in theory. I just don't think it would actually work because of human behavior. Like, I think people are like too selfish to let communism work and like work for the whole. You know?
Yeah.
Is that what you predicted?
Yes.
Yeah, he's laughing because that's exactly what he said.
Thank you for playing. So yes.
That's all I have to do. I'm sorry for bothering
Fine. Let me know if you have any more questions.
So this is what our generation thinks. This is what everybody in our generation thinks. If you ask a total stranger, that is what they will say. Okay? And the ones who were raised in really pro-America households, like where better dead than red is a motto, they'll say that communism sucks. And then if you say, but think outside of the realm of traditionalism, they'll say it's great in theory, it doesn't work in practice. And that is annoying for me because, it's annoying anytime that everyone kind of reaches a common consensus on something that's reflective of the fact that they've never actually considered it. Like, everyone says the exact same thing, which means everyone is letting one other entity do all their thinking for them in this matter. If you think about communism and the fact that it's a totalitarian regime, that it makes really egregious sacrifices of liberty on the grounds of trying to get people to cooperate, then it's clear to me, at least, that it's not desirable even if it's working as intended. It's not just that it's a great theoretical thing that doesn't work because the mechanisms aren't tuned to human beings. Even if everything went according to plan, I still don't think it would be a desirable way of living. Also, I resent people calling it a great idea when, in my mind, great ideas necessarily must be implementable. Like, how do we solve world hunger? I'll just rub my magic genie lamp and then wish for there to be no more world hunger. What a great idea. It certainly would solve all the problems, but it's impossible. So maybe it doesn't deserve to be called great. Anyway, communism involves the complete elimination of private property, all kinds of private property. And you have no way of determining how your own life is going to be if you can't take the fruits of your labor and decide what you're going to take, what you're not going to take out of all the things that are available to you. You can't choose when you're going to work or what you're going to do. That's going to be assigned to you. I think that even communism is based on who owns the means of production and stuff. So I know that it doesn't really literally in its main manifesto outline, the state's going to be telling you who you're allowed to mate with or whatever. But it's a totalitarian regime that has very, very strict controls over your financial life, which means your life. And I don't think that people should be so quick to accept that it would be great in theory. But mainly I'm just annoyed that everyone says exactly the same thing. Everyone says exactly the same thing. I don't know how it happened. Think about how that happened. How the hell did that happen? How did everyone in our generation get the exact same answer to this question? They must have heard it from someone. Someone must have said it. But I don't know who. Anyway, what was I thinking of?
It's a conspiracy.
It is everyone thinking the same thing based on there must be some undercurrent of something. But maybe it's just the way that communism is always framed in our education system, I guess. I don't know. I'm tempted to say education, but it's so common across our entire generation. It's like, it's not just happening in one school, it's happening everywhere. I don't know. Why did I bring up communism? There's some place that we were going that
I don't think there was anywhere we were going. You just kind of started. Have we talked about systems of government?
Oh, I was thinking of capitalism. Right. So, capitalism. What do you think about capitalism? This isn't as easy to predict as the other ones, but there are some like talking points that people consistently hit. Oh, hang on, I have an idea. I'm gonna mute my mic to you, but leave the recording on for a second to make a prediction on what I think you're gonna say, so that I can still play this game, still hopefully win. Okay, ready? I'll be back in a second. You are going to say that capitalism is necessary in order to produce goods and services the way that we do in the modern world. You need that kind of incentivization package. You need people to be able to make money for doing things better. But it also leads to a lot of wealth inequality, and for that reason there are a lot of social problems that come with it. Okay. What do you think?
Okay, first of all, could you define capitalism for me?
A system of economics where people who earn the medium of exchange currency are able to invest what they earn into goods and services that will allow them to earn more, which they can then invest more and then earn more, etc., on and on and on. So the means of production are available for private ownership to anyone who can afford to buy them, and people can use what they earn to make more stuff to earn more. That's capitalism. And American capitalism, for all the free market people who want to talk about how that's all that it's supposed to be, is it's just supposed to be you can do whatever you want. American capitalism involves government institutions such as the Patent Office, regulatory agencies, including, I would say the Patent Office is a regulatory agency, that sets rules that limit what the marketplace can do, what individuals within the marketplace can do. The main intention being that it works better or reduces harm towards bystanders, but there can be other reasons too. But anyway, there's some government involvement, typically for more coordination, but sometimes for gaming the system. What do you think about capitalism?
I think it's generally the most, I don't even know if I would call it a system, but it's like the most natural way to think about things. Like, I have something, you have something, we trade.
Well, the key is, you can't have capitalism really without the medium of exchange, which is money.
Right.
Or capital, actually. I mean, capital takes many forms. What money does is it allows, you can transfer anything, you can translate anything's value into monetary value, which you can then transfer back to other things. So you can compare apples and oranges, You can compare how many apples is one goat worth? Well, how much does a goat cost? How much does an apple cost? Bam. Then you can exchange perfectly easily. So having that kind of medium where you can obtain all of one type of good and that can or you can just be really good in one area and then you can branch out into any other area, I think is important, and also means that it's not like natural in a more proper sense, because what you just described is like bartering, but capitalism isn't rooted in bartering. It's rooted in capital. It's rooted in this universal perception of the value of goods and services and this liquidation of value. Anyway, I can see that you're doing something with your computer. What are you doing with your computer? Are you asking for help? Are you?
No. I was looking up the definition of capitalism to see how it differed from what you said.
Okay. How different is it from what I said?
It's describing it as an economic system based on private ownership of the means of production and their operation. Characteristics central to capitalism include private property, capital accumulation, wage labor, voluntary exchange, a price system, and competitive markets. Anyway, I don't know, I guess kind of like the way democracy is the best, worst form of government, capitalism is the best, worst form of economics.
What's good about it?
It's the most efficient way for people to get the most value out of things.
How do you mean?
In another economic system, it's like you might assume that everybody needs one apple and one orange, but one person might value apples more highly and one person might value oranges more highly, and it's more efficient for them to be able to buy whatever they want rather than being given what they are assumed to want.
Okay, so you're saying that people having capital means that they can use their judgment for which goods and services they think they can prioritize as they see fit. So I can say,
Yeah.
I want a flat screen TV, or I want a vacation, or I want whatever. And you have the ability to choose, which is the point that I made in contrast to communism. So you don't get to make this point again, because I already made it. So come up with something else. Also, it's not what I predicted, so I want you to keep talking until you say what I predicted you're going to say.
Well, I don't know what you want me to say.
What's bad about it?
Market failures.
Let's do it again for lay people.
Like the way that certain prices things are not captured in the way that we do business,
Like medicine.
Right.
So the price of medicine you're considering here to be a market failure, where the invisible hand of market, where supply beating demand is supposed to keep the prices of everything reasonable, is not applying because inelasticity of demand, because they'll buy it regardless. So changing the price doesn't change the demand. Changing the price doesn't change the demand, it just increases the profit. So prices rise, right?
Yes.
Yes. So, but there's other... Again, I am really trying to put you in a groove where you're going to end up saying the thing I want you to say. So, all right, I guess you just know. So, compare the quality of life in America versus the quality of life in the Soviet Union. Well, actually, not even the Soviet Union. Let's say Saudi Arabia. Well, again, like all these countries have their own unique cultures and stuff. Compare quality of life in a capitalist country versus the quality of life in a non-capitalist country. Which do you expect to be better?
Capitalist?
Why?
I don't know.
If my dad was here, he would be very disappointed that your education has not taught you how to respond to that question. Okay, I'm going to say one word and then you explain the entire concept to me. Okay?
Okay.
Competition. So how does competition fit into capitalism?
Competition allows things to be produced at the lowest cost.
Competition allows the marketplace... If you make your goods at higher quality, you will get more profit. So there is an incentive structure for making things of higher quality. There's also an incentive structure for doing things at a lower cost, making the same thing at a lower cost, because the more cost you save, the more profit you get. So there are these forces working to increase quality and decrease costs, which leads to this very strong push for better material possessions. Better TVs, better phones, all this stuff is better. Tastier food that's cheaper. You know, competition is the root of why the quality of life is better in general in countries that adopted capitalism in the early 1900s and whatever, late 1800s. I don't know the history of capitalism in America. Anyway, competition. Competition is the key. You need to have reward be proportional to performance if you want to incentivize better performance. Retaining reward proportionality to performance is really, really, really important for maintaining this explosion of better, cheaper stuff that we're living in right now. And competition is at the heart of that. But one of the problems with capitalism is that the more capital you have, the more leverage you have over the marketplace to acquire more capital. And then you get more capital, and you get more leverage to influence the market and get more capital, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a positive feedback loop, right? which leads to poor wealth distribution because capital concentrates in capitalistic systems. Because the lion's share of the reward for any economic activity goes to the people who supply the capital rather than the ideas or the labor or whatever. Some people are like of a mind that if you're really rich and all you do is invest your money, then maybe you don't deserve reward because you're not breaking your back out in the fields or whatever. But what you are doing is sustaining a risk. It's just not physical, personal risk. It's financial risk. And if somebody else makes $50,000 a year, if you risk $50,000 in a year, you're going to get a payoff that justifies doing so. It's like basically the point that I'm trying to make is that risking capital does deserve reward, even though it's not physically exhausting or anything. That's kind of being on the side of greater concentrations of wealth. And despite the fact that I do think that risking capital is worthwhile and deserving of reward, I don't like the outcome of the 0.01% having 50% of the wealth or whatever. You didn't say what I thought you were going to say. You are more surprising than your roommate.
Congratulations. Are you going to play for me what you thought I was going to say? Or you can just tell me the gist of it.
The gist of it was that capitalism is really good for making better, cheaper goods, and so is the source of a lot of all the great things in the world today, but it comes at the cost of wealth being concentrated into the hands of the few, which has a lot of social consequences. So that's what I thought you were going to say, but I guess I'm 1 for 2. But the question is capitalism the best for liberty and happiness? And you made the comparison before, in the same way that democracy is the worst form of government except for all the others that have been tried, you said that capitalism is the best worst form of government, or the best worst form of economics. How the pro-cons of capitalism outweigh the pro-cons of any other economic system that has so far been developed. Which is also the way I think about it. I'm not trying to overthrow capitalism and install a different economic system, but I do think I think that people who are really into capitalistic purity are kind of being simplistic when they think that just letting the free market do whatever is 100% of the time going to be the way towards more liberty and happiness. The example that I gave before of the patent office is one way that the government interferes with market business in a way that vastly improves the efficiency, the effectiveness of the market, and produces a lot of liberty and happiness because it incentivizes. The patent office makes sure that people who invent things are rewarded for doing so, because it's so cost effective to just copy what other people are doing, because you don't have to sustain any of the R&D costs. All you have to do is buy one of their products and do whatever it is that they do. As long as you have an effective way of copying, you can get the best goods without having to pay any of the costs of developing them. So the patent office is a way of making sure that the people who actually put in the effort to invent things and are smart enough to invent things get the reward for it that they deserve. And that's just one example of how interfering with the market in a certain way can change the system to incentivize creating new, better goods at lower costs more than doing nothing would. And I think that one of the ways that we approach economic policy in this country is we have the free market types who don't want any interference, and we have the others, I guess, the regulators who want to make more rules that control what people can do. And I think that the only way that we can approach this rationally is to consider the rules, the intervention that's being proposed and say, what do we expect the outcome of this to be? And if it's worth it, then do it. And if it's not worth it, then don't do it. And anyone who describes their economic policy to you by just describing how much regulation they want there to be is probably not doing a lot of thinking about it. I guess what I would call it is, in terms of making, designing the rule set that will lead to the best market, I don't think that the answer is more regulation or less regulation. The answer is smart regulation. We should get the regulation that has the most benefit for the least cost. And that's what our approach should be. And I think that right now, the only voices that I'm really hearing blaring loudly are the people who want whose whole position can be summed up with more regulation or less regulation. And none of those people are being genuine. All of those people are being disingenuous. Smart regulation is the way to go. Smart regulation of a capitalistic system is, I think, the best way to create